And it's good to see everybody here. Glad you're here. And if there's any angels in attendance, glad you're here too. I'd never heard that or thought of that, and I'm so glad we're having that class. It's quite interesting. So a couple of years ago, I told Jared that I'd really prefer not to be up here preaching. My preference would be I come in, I sit back there, and I stay back there, and I just listen and observe. Do you remember what you said to me? Jared says, yeah, but I bet you're learning in preparation for a sermon. And thinking about it, the deepest Bible study I do is in preparation for a sermon or a class. And for that I'm thankful. In preparing for this class, I learned more about the subject of giving, and it has hit me harder than any other topic that I've addressed in a sermon. And I started out thinking, oh, I'm going to do a sermon about money, and it really shifted into a sermon about giving. And as we know in 2 Corinthians 9:7, it says, so let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And often I hear that when we're taking out the collection, that is quoted as well. And what I know about myself, I am yet to become a cheerful giver. It's something this whole preparation for the sermon has showed me some of my shortcomings, and where I need where I need a lot of work to mature myself in the faith. When you hear that phrase about God loves a cheerful giver, do your minds also tend to go towards reaching in the pocket and giving? Or do we think of it in a broader sense? I didn't realize until recently how foundational the idea of giving is to the Christian faith. I didn't think about how every sermon is either about giving or comes from the idea of giving. Literally, almost every sermon has that in it. And literally, we wouldn't have a new covenant without giving. We wouldn't be here today without giving. And the reason I say that is, for God so loved the world, he gave. Without that, we're not here. It's the cornerstone of our faith. And before it was just, oh, yeah, time to give. And again, one of the things I've realized is I need to, the idea is just like the idea of thankfulness. It should be from the heart, and in fact it says right here, give as he proposes as he purposes in his heart. So it's all really a matter of the heart. Completely a matter of the heart. But it's pretty important. And when I thought of giving, I was thinking, well, how often is give, just keyword give or giving in the Bible? That's irrelevant. And I know that we're told that the greatest commandment is to love thy Lord and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, if you think about it, well, first off, the reference to love in the Bible, in the entire Bible, in the New King James, there's 504 references to love. But what is the consequence of love? Giving. For God so loved the world, he gave. So love is important. It's the greatest commandment. However, that's mentioned 504 times, and the idea of mentioning finance or verses that reference finance or possessions or money and possessions is how many times? If I'm to believe Google, and there's a lot of places in Google, a lot of people saying the similar thing, over 2,000 references to finance, money, and possessions. So obviously, that's a relevant topic as well. I'm going to backtrack to the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the earth and the heavens. The heavens and the earth. That's verse 1. Then in 3, then God said, let there be light. Verse 6, then God said, let there be firmament. 9, then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together. Verse 14, 20, 24, 26, and 29. Then God said. He spoke the whole thing into existence. It's all his. And Tom said it standing here. Let's give back to God what is already his. It's all his. He created everything. Giving is simply returning to the proper owner what is already his and what he has lent us. I think in terms, and certainly before becoming a Christian, my bank account, my car, my house, my land, my this, my that. And we use those words, mine or yours, but what we're really referring to is, it is yours to manage for God. It is yours to be a caretaker. It's yours to be a steward, and we're tasked with being a good steward. We're just privileged to be able to manage it, to use it. And we are to use it for what? All the stuff we got, all our stuff, is to be used to do God's will here on earth. And when we give, it's for that same very purpose. And just reiterating that it's all God's, in Psalms 50:12, if I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all its fullness. We think about home, growing up, I'm sure I saw it in dozens of my friends' houses somewhere, a little placard somewhere. I'm sure my mom had it somewhere in our house. Home is where the heart is. Your heart follows your treasure. Home isn't where your heart is. Well, home isn't where your heart should be. Ron and Jared's songs this morning, this is not my home. Our home is elsewhere. That's where our heart should be. And unfortunately, our hearts follow our treasure, and sometimes our hearts are misplaced in treasures that we think we own. Or, let me rephrase that. In treasures that I think I own. I can't speak for you guys. Tom's sermon last week, and I think Jeff's sermon the week before, if I'm not mistaken, both of them, there's two parallel verses that I find interesting. Matthew 7, judge not, that you be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with what measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Now that one just doesn't mention giving. But the parallel verse in Luke 6, verse 37 and 8, judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Here's give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And really what it reminds me of is the idea that more and more I'm seeing that everything God tells us to do, even though we know we're here to do His work here on earth, everything He tells us to do benefits us in some way. The idea of gratitude literally gives us a return on our health. Prayer literally gives us a return on our health, among other things. But here, if we give, with the same measure, it will be given back to us. That sounds like it's a benefit to us as well. Certainly when we give, the receiver benefits. But good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put in our bosom. And with that same measure that we use, it will be measured back to us. What's not mentioned in there is money. There's no topic of money there. But there is mention of giving. God's talking about something bigger. And I know it's an Old Testament concept, but the idea of tithing, tithe meaning 1/10 or 10% or something like that, was law. And I know it's not so much a part of how we're supposed to see giving, but I think in many ways that 10% number kind of bouncing around in many of our minds somehow. But if we're talking about more than just money, giving God 10% of what? God gives us 24 hours every day until that final day. 10% of 24 hours is 2.4 hours. If you multiply, do the math, and I've got it here written somewhere, 2.4 hours is 16.8 hours a week. But to make it in a month, that's 72 hours a month. That's 9 8-hour days a month. If we're going to give God that 10% of our time, that's 9 8-hour days a month. I can't say I give that back. I can't say my mind is focused on God, that I'm in prayer, that I'm in service to Him. Nearly 1/3 of every month. But I think the idea of giving includes our time. It includes our resources. It includes our energy. It includes our imaginations and minds. God gives us a tomato seed. If we are good stewards of that seed, in a very short time, He will have given us food that I bet you it pleases Him when we give that food to other people as well. But not only do we get from that one seed, not only do we get food, we get a whole bunch more seeds. So forth and so on. Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats overflow with new wine. It is Old Testament, but 1 Kings chapter 17. If you want to open there, we're going to look at a few verses out of that. 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 8 through 15. I had to ask Jeff how to pronounce a few of these names here, but it's about Elijah and the widow. 1 Kings 17, verses 8 through 15. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Arise and go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, indeed, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, Please bring me a little water in a cup that I may drink. And as she was going to get it, he called her and said, Please bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. So she said, As the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread, only a handful of flour in a bin, and a little oil in a jar. And see, I am gathering, asking so much from one who has the least. It looks like, and maybe I'm wrong on this, it looks like so she can be helped. She did as requested, and now she has a bin that doesn't empty full of flour, a jar full of oil that doesn't empty. She was asked to give so God could help her. Elijah could have gone to anybody and said, Hey, got some bread? I'm hungry. Got some water? I'm thirsty. He was sent to her. Not for his benefit, but for her benefit. And that ultimately could be the exact reason why we're told to give. Does it make sense? Is it possible? So, in conclusion, I'm thinking, well, so now what? Now I know I got to get over my stinginess. I need to, when I give from the heart and joyfully and cheerfully. Because that's what we're told to do. It's that simple. I have to shift my mind from, these are my glasses, from ownership to stewardship. And remember that nothing is mine. It is mine temporarily on loan from God that I may be a good steward and use it, use it for His purpose here on earth, for His good here, not my good. And the things that I have, the things that I have been entrusted with to me, aren't given to me for my pleasure. Which a lot of things in this world, they go, I want that. That'll make my life better. That'll make my life easier. But that's not why things are given to us. And so we can make other people's lives better. But again, most importantly, so that God's will can be done here on earth. It's just like the prayers where we can pray for anything we want. God's going to answer the ones that move his agenda forward here on earth. And the whole idea that your story last week about the farmer who had a bountiful harvest, and he was talking about how I have grown so much. I have too much now, and I have to build new barns. And there wasn't the mention that God happened to give him. In the story about the talents, where God gave the guy that got the 5 talents. It was like just exactly, we're given stuff and we're being tested. God gave that guy 5 talents and that guy doubled those. He gave somebody else 2 talents and that guy did well with it. And the guy that he only gave 1 talent to did nothing with it. If we do nothing with what little God has, when God gives us something little and we do nothing with it, he's not going to give us more. We're not going to live in abundance. For a very specific reason. Anyway. So again, just I have to, as I leave here, and as I come back week after week, and as I live my life, my focus, of course, love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. But realize that the consequence of loving is giving. If anybody needs prayers of the church,